Okay, good afternoon, just after 12 o'clock. And we are in week 6 coming up this week of the semester. And first of all, I wanted to talk about last week. A lot of you had problems with the groups. Some people cooperated and worked together and some people did not. So hopefully all of you got your 30 quotes done so that you all know what's going on with the play. Now, this week and the following week, I'm not going to require the groups, even though it says so on the modules, because we just had too many problems. So each of you individually need to do the quotes for this week. And if you look at your syllabus, that's Acts 3 and 4. There are, I believe there's 18 quotes. It's for 15 points. So use your No Fear Shakespeare. It does a great job of helping you to understand and explain the quotations. So for the quotations, you need 2 or 3 sentences that tell the importance, especially the meaning of the quotations. You might want to mention where they are, what's happening when you explain the quotations. And just number the quotations. You do not need to write them out again, okay? Just put the number on, type the number, and then give your explanation of the quotation. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about the prompt. You're not going to be writing this essay for a few weeks, but I wanted to mention the prompt again to help you as you do your quotations, that you're getting a focus toward what your essay is going to be. And the big thing is you're going to be talking about Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, King Macbeth, or Macbeth. He changes from Thane of the Thane of Cawdor to, or Cawdor, excuse me, to the king in the first part of the book. Now, early in the play for Lady Macbeth, she is the strong character, and she lacks all humanity. Unlike Macbeth, who has a conscience, and you can find quotes for that, and I'll go over some of those today. She chides Macbeth for his lack of courage in his uncertainty in regards to the assassination of King Duncan. Okay, so now Macbeth, to give you kind of a summary of the two characters and what they're like at the beginning and how they change, which is what your prompt basically asks for. They both take 2 different paths in descending into insanity, as you will see as you go along in the play. Lady Macbeth is a strong one when it comes to planning and executing the murder of King Duncan. But it doesn't take too long for her to completely regret her part in Macbeth's murders. There are other murders coming up after King Duncan. Macbeth, on the other hand, here's your contrast. He starts out as a man of humanity and conscience, but after he murders King Duncan, he quickly slips into murderous madness, motivated by the witches. So we see that as a result of their horrendous deeds, both characters become insane and are met with death. Now, their paths that they go on are different. So your essays, a lot of it, what it's going to be about is what they are like at the beginning, and then how they change by the end, and what that shows about the play and about life. Okay, now I want to go over some of the quotations that you did this last week and tell how they fit this prompt. Okay, excuse me. All right, so for Act 1, number 3, it's the first witch. And she says, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." Then the second witch says, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor." Then the third witch says, "All hail Macbeth, thou shalt be king hereafter." Now this really gets Macbeth thinking about what he's going to become, his status. And on quote number 5, he says, "I am fain of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion, whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs?" In other words, he thinks of the possibility of being king, and that really gets his pulse going rapidly. But then he says, "If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir?" Okay, so he's saying maybe I can become king, just bide my time, be patient. Now, Lady Macbeth, for number 8, says, talking to Macbeth, she says, "Glamis thou art, and Cawdor thou shalt be. What art thou promised? Yet I do fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearer way." So she's afraid he's not going to have the evilness to kill King Duncan. She fears that he's just too nice, actually. Okay. And then then she says in quote number 10, "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to toe top full of direst cruelty." So here early in Act 1, she's really firming herself up, setting her mind to be cruel so she can influence Macbeth to kill King Duncan. Okay, let's take a look at Act 2. Oh, a couple more from Act 1. Macbeth on number 14 says, "We will proceed no further in this business. He hath honored me of late, and I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people." So he's telling the queen that he doesn't want to do it, basically, no further in this business. Then she says this in response, number 16, "I would, while smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn to you, have done to this." So she's really resolute in trying to make him feel like he's weak in not fully contemplating the murder of Duncan. Then in Act 2, after the killing is done, after Macbeth has murdered King Duncan, he's talking to Lady Macbeth, and he says, "I'll go no more. I am afraid to think what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not." That was when she wanted him to go back and put the bloody knives with the guards, who were all drugged and asleep. And then Macbeth says to that, infirm of purpose, "Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures." So Lady Macbeth says, "Oh, this is no big deal. Give me the daggers and I'll go put them in. I'm resolute and you are kind of a coward." And Lady Macbeth also says, "My hands are of your color, but I shame to wear a heart so white." White means like lily white, no strength and conviction in his murder of Duncan. And she also says in quote 8, "A little water clears us of this deed. How easy it is then, your constancy hath left you unattended." So again, she's making it seem like it's not that big a deal, just a little water, get the blood off her hands, and we can forget that you actually did this murder. And then it's going to go into Act 3, or end of Act 2, and then into 3 with the consequences of the murder, I should say. Okay. I wanted to talk about Chapter 7 in your Bedford. You did entries 7, 8, and 9, and number 9 is the chapter on writing on literature. Okay, and going to go over some of the main points on writing on literature. This is your one essay where you are fully writing on literature. And this is your Macbeth essay. So chapter 7 talks about some important things as far as putting an essay together and writing it. The first thing that is in the, I'll go over the primary points, getting an interpretation. And I believe I've given you an interpretation for you to write your essay on Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, what they are like at the beginning of the play, and how they change, and what the consequences are for that. And now that you've got that in mind, you need to write, once you finish the play, is to write up just a sketch outline, just a main outline with your thesis at the top. And you're going to write a thesis up that explains these main points of interpretation that we're talking about with the play. Now, it mentions in the book also about an introduction. So keep in mind, when you write your introduction, you're going to give some context for the thesis and for the main points you're going to make in your essay. So you'll start out a little bit of where and when and what's happening at the beginning of the play, and then go give a thesis statement. Now, when you write your essay, you want to avoid just writing a plot summary. You want to talk about the two characters, what they're like at the beginning and how they change. And as you write your paragraphs, you're going to integrate quotations from the quotations I've given you to look up. And you're going to use those to explain your main ideas. You'll introduce the quotations, and then you'll explain the quotations. That's called integrating, okay, blending in with your whole essay. And in citing quotations, okay, first of all, the chapter talks about quoting, when you quote, providing context. And that's what I meant about be sure that you're blending your quotations in with the paragraphs. The topic sentences are explained through your quotations and your explanation of the quotations. And when you use the quotations, you want to be sure to state who the speaker is and what the acts, scenes, and lines are. And how you do that is, it's actually on the quotes I gave you. It has act, scene, and line with Roman numerals for act, Roman numerals for scene, and then Arabic numerals, 1, 2, 3, so on, for the lines. And that's on page 182 if you want to see how it's done just with the Arabic for your citation, or you can just go by the quotes I've given you in the act, scene, and lines that are listed at the end of each quote. So speaker, quotation, explanation, and act, scene, and line. And those are the main points I wanted to go over for writing an essay on literature. Okay, so this week coming up is week 6. And the assignments that you have going on this week are, first of all, your research question response for the research module. Okay, research question response. Then you are, the other big thing you're going to be working on besides Macbeth is to do the River Reader essays, to do your write-ups, your outlines, and evaluations. And there are 4 essays this week, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the essays, to give you an idea, in your Macbeth essay, you're doing somewhat of a contrast on Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And what that's called when you write up an essay where you write about one character, then you write about the next character, and then back to the first character, and then go to the second character. That would be 4 paragraphs right there in your essay. You would start with Lady Macbeth, what she's like early in the play. Then you would go to Macbeth, what he's like early on in the play. And then you go back to Lady Macbeth and tell how she changes in the course of the play. And then you would again go to Macbeth and talk about his changes. Then for a 5th body paragraph, those are 4 body paragraphs. For a 5th body paragraph, you could talk about the results for both of them, how things turn out for them, and the significance of that. Okay, so that would be a 7-paragraph essay on Macbeth. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks, but you can keep that in mind for later. Now, next week, you're going to write a compare-contrast essay where you write about such things as comparing 2 sisters, 2 jobs, 2 vehicles. And this divided approach is a good approach to take. There is another approach that I'll mention next week, which is called point by point. And you talk about both of your items in the same paragraph. You don't write separate paragraphs like you are going to do for Macbeth. I'll talk more about that next week and give you an example. So module, River Reader, and then you're going to do Macbeth Acts 3 and 4, and you do not have to work in groups, remember. You're just going to do those on your own. There are 18 quotes in Acts 2 and 3. So no more groups, and work out of No Fear of Shakespeare, and that should really help you. And that is basically it for this week. And good luck with all your work. Email me if you have any questions.